allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, I'd like a moment of silence to remember all of our friends who have passed this year, especially Bob Borsha and Rich Schultanis. Some of you may not know them. They have given a tremendous amount of time to this village over many years. Projects like the playground, landscaping projects, canoe racks, it goes on and on. They started the VLAP program here at Eidelweiss and volunteered for that until they were either not here or couldn't any longer. Two tremendous guys. Not to mention all of the wonderful barbecues and lobster fests that we had, which they really were a major part of. I feel lucky to have had them as friends. Thank you. Okay, some quick introductions. Those of you who know me, Bob Ingram, I'm the moderator today for our annual meeting. Over here we have our commissioners, Nancy Cole, Mark Graffam, Woody McNiven, clerk at the end there, Doug Prescott, our treasurer is in the audience, Dinah Reese, and our administrator, Jennifer Scully. Okay, it must have taken a long time to vote. Okay, I'm going to quickly run through these. These are just my procedure rules, if you will, and I'll try to be quick. The process is very simple. I will read the article. It will be moved and seconded. One of the commissioners will speak first, and then it will be open for discussion. All discussion questions go through the moderator. The moderator will make every attempt to allow everyone time to speak. Raise your hand and I will call on you. Please stand and state your name before speaking. Those with softer voices, I would ask to come to the microphone. And all speakers must be courteous and speak to the issues, not any individual raising them. The moderator will not allow personal attacks or inappropriate comments. Any amendments to the motion must be presented in writing. We will discuss and vote one amendment at a time. At the end of the discussion, I will read the motion a final time, and we will vote. Only registered voters may vote. To prove you're a registered voter, you all signed this yellow sheet. When we vote, I'll ask for you to raise the yellow sheet. Bond issues. We have one article today with a bond issue, and that will require a 3/5 vote, not just a majority. Fortunately, the bond issue is under $100,000, so we don't have to keep the polls open. When we get to that, we will be using our yellow slips to vote. Let's see. Additionally, any 3 voters may request a ballot voting. If before we actually take the vote, if 3 people raise their hand and they're here present and they want to have a paper ballot, we will do that. If you have a procedural question, simply call out point of order. We'll try to get that resolved. Any motion made to change the order of the day will require a 2/3 vote, and by majority, voters can overrule any of the moderator's procedures or rules. Any questions? Seeing no questions, we'll move on to Article 1. Let's move forward here. Hold on a second. All right. Okay. Mm-hmm. I want this. All right, now I'm struggling with this.
Mr. Moderator?
I don't know why it's... I'll get you in a second. Oh. Okay. Is that clear? Can you see that all right? Okay. Hold on. Better? Okay. Okay, now, before we get started, I'm looking for somebody to make a motion. I don't even know if we have any, at this time, any, no, oh, we do, Larry, okay. So I'd like a motion from somebody to allow non-resident property owners to speak.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, please raise your yellow sheets. You're going to get used to that. All those opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Now, did somebody have a question, or was that what it was about? Okay. Okay, Article 1 we've taken care of. We voted. And very quickly we got the results. And Nancy Cole, congratulations. Doug, congratulations.
Did we take numbers?
Numbers are 16.
For both.
16-0. Both cases, absolutely. Okay. Okay, that brings us to Article 2. Article 2. Okay. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of road improvements and to authorize a 10-year loan with the issuance of not more than $50,000 worth of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33. And to authorize the municipal officials to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon. And to furthermore raise and appropriate the amount of $3,325 for the first year's interest payment. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
What, who wants to speak on this? Okay.
First slide you have, which is projected there. In your handouts, it says
Can't see it.
portals. Just to have you look at this, because this is going to explain most of the water that's in this article.
Louder. Louder.
Is this off? So if you go to your handouts, you'll see a handout that says Grant Portal in the upper left corner. This is a screenshot of the website for FEMA. They have a grants portal that keeps track of any declared disaster that any municipality in the country is making claims against. So we had 2 storms in 2023, going on 2 years ago now. The first one was in May, and there was a lot of damage in Eidelweiss, and the second one was in July. The first storm, FEMA did not declare it a disaster. Therefore, there was no FEMA grants or money to be made available to reimburse us for any fixes that we did. So we spent tens of thousands of dollars after May of 2023. Then July 16th came along, and we had a worse storm. We had close to 5 inches of rain in a very short time, major destruction in the town of Madison and in Eidelweiss. FEMA did declare that a disaster, and the village started to apply and got on the grants portal. Work was done immediately to open up some roads, and there was a presentation by the board at that time that they were going to be over budget and they were taking money out of capital reserves. As a result of applying to FEMA, that board only got reimbursed for $9,000 worth of water pipe replacement work done by the water operator on Grissom Road. We got a total of $7,200 back. The record shows that they said they spent $90,000. I'm trying to find out how they applied to FEMA, if they did. It's very difficult to retrace what happened in 2023. But what you're looking at right now is a result of meeting with FEMA on a video computer conference every week with five FEMA employees shifting in and out, and 2 New Hampshire Homeland Security emergency management people that are based in the state that manage the projects for the state of New Hampshire.
to give you a quick glimpse of what is going to be the basic strategy of the entire warrant, you need to look at the dollar amounts on this sheet. There are 6 projects, and the magnifying glass with the plus sign in it designates each row. The first one you see is utilities, and that's the $7,200 that FEMA reimbursed us for a $9,600 contract with the water operator to replace the water main that got washed right out of the road in July of 2023. The second one is cleaning out culverts and ditches. This is FEMA's estimate that it's going to cost $77,172.66 to clean all of the debris that went into the culverts and ditches, and FEMA reimburses at 75%. So the number to the right of that, that's $57,879.50. That's 75% of the $77,000. So if you just look down the row of the 5 projects that are shown here, there's actually 6. You see that the fourth one, roads and bridges, is a total of $483,820. The last one on this sheet, or is there another sheet that follows this? No. The last one on this sheet is fixing the culvert on Grissom Road. The previous board got an estimate by a local contractor of over $500,000 to fix this. This is actually a mistake in the database. You see that it says Grissom Road Culvert A and E. That stands for architecture and engineering only. So this is not the total cost of the project. This is only $70,000 that they put on there for the cost of engineering an alternative lower cost solution for that culvert and getting permits from the state. This number is actually closer to $500,000 by the time the project's done. So if you added up the column of available costs, you see that we're in the several hundreds of thousands of dollars. The way this is supposed to work is the village should go and fix all this stuff, which means we would have to raise the money to do all this work and then submit the application to FEMA to have them decide whether we're going to get 75% reimbursement for any pieces of the project that we did. We decided we're not going to ask the village to vote to raise $700,000 to $800,000 and do all this work on the hope that FEMA actually gives us any reimbursement. We have no guarantee of getting a dime if we did all this. So what we did is worked out a strategy based on what we think FEMA does and what the state of New Hampshire does. FEMA will give the money to the state of New Hampshire, emergency management. The state of New Hampshire decides whether they actually write a check to Eidelweiss. FEMA says, they'll say it's obligated, the project is obligated. That means they're going to send the money to the state of New Hampshire. Then state of New Hampshire Homeland Security Emergency Management decides whether they give the check to Eidelweiss at any point or whether they do something else with it. Another emergency came up. I don't know. Mm-hmm. No one says that there are any rules written down. So I meet with these people every week on the computer. They have come here in teams. All of the projected costs are done by them, not done by the village, which is usually the way it's done, is you do the project and then you submit for it. They understood our circumstances, and they sent teams of people out that were here all day for a couple of days going over the data with our DPW crew, and they actually went around the village and they looked at every road and decided how much gravel they thought it was going to cost to bring the road back to the standard that it was before the storm happened, and how much it's going to cost to get the road that washed into the ditches because of the storm out of the ditches into trucks and truck it somewhere. And they have people that keep track of whether you accidentally put it too close to a wetlands, and they have a person that's assigned to it to see if you're not damaging any historical sites or disturbing any Indian burial grounds and all kinds of historical stuff. Federal government. So what we did is said, let's have a plan in 2025 where we start fixing things and get the invoices for the first round into FEMA as quickly as possible. and see whether FEMA is actually going to pay. Then we're going to feel our way and do the next project and get the invoices to them. What we're going to do is finance the beginning of starting each one of these projects based on the operating budget as we do every year. You're going to see warrant articles where if we see that we're getting contractors to show up and the weather's going to let us fix this stuff, and we get the invoices into them quickly, and then measure how fast they do cash flow turnaround and get the 75% back to us. State law allows us to spend that money again on the roads. So you see, we're going to parlay it. Keep playing the 75% and see how fast they turn the money back around to us. If we see that they're doing it, then we're going to increase what we're doing. And this first loan is only going to be used after we prove to ourselves that we are getting reimbursed by FEMA, and it's worth starting to invest more money in getting these projects done to get the 75% reimbursement back. We have asked for extensions on all these projects into August of 2026. So this is a 2-year play. We've been advised by Homeland Security, New Hampshire, that their management wants to see that we have begun the projects. They don't want to see that we're not beginning the projects until next year. They might tell us that grant money is going away from you then. So we have to show them we're starting. So we have to start each of these 6 projects this year, get the invoices into them as quickly as possible, measure how long it takes for them to turn it around, adjust our planning based on the turnaround of the cash flow, then decide whether we need to execute this loan because it's all working, FEMA's working with us, New Hampshire's working with us, or we don't touch this loan because they're not paying. So that's what we're asking for. You're going to see other warrant articles where we're going to go to the unassigned fund balance for gravel money that we didn't spend last year. We want you to approve that so that that's money that we can use this year to pursue these projects as we see how FEMA and New Hampshire are going to react to us. So that's what the loan is about. We're asking you to approve this loan, and if FEMA and New Hampshire don't give us the cash flow back, we're not going to touch it. We won't execute the loan. We won't apply to a bank and get the money because we're not getting the 75% reimbursement like we would hope.
Questions?
Diane Rozak. So what happens?
Go to the mic, Diane.
Yeah, if you would.
So,
Yeah.
so Madison TV can capture you. Tilt the mic down.
So if we start these projects and FEMA doesn't pay, then how do these things get fixed?
They get fixed by us expending the operating budget in the warrant articles that we're going to ask you. We won't be going into debt at all to do this. We're going to do as much as we can with the budget that you've approved today.
Okay.
And we're going to use, if they pay us checks for 75% back of what we submit, we're going to use that right away because we think they're going to continue to pay us this year and into next year. And then next year we come back and we all talk about what we got done this year, show you what FEMA did do, and then say, here's our strategy through August of 2026 of us continuing to do this to get as much done and get the 75% reimbursements. We keep spending the 75% reimbursements as we get them.
So if FEMA does not pay and we do it through the operating budget, how long do you estimate all these repairs are going to take?
We will do as much as we can. If the money is not flowing, there's no way that we're going to be able to do everything that this sheet says. There'll be things that don't get fixed in the 2-year period. They'll have to take longer against our regular operating budgets going forward.
And is
So we're
that,
going to have to prioritize what we're doing too.
right? Is that by not fixing these things, is that a danger to the people that live around those areas?
They have lived with these conditions since July of 2023.
Okay.
The ones that we think are, Grissom Road has been closed.
Okay.
That's what those people are living with, a road that doesn't connect into Aspen and the roads above it. There's exposure with us, we're going to explain, there's exposure with that whole area with the water system, because the only water main that feeds all of Grissom Road, Granville, Bergdorf, Constance Place, the houses on Route 113 are all fed by one pipe that flows through where the culvert has been washed out twice. If that gets washed out again and we don't fix it right away, none of those houses have water.
Okay.
We're going to explain that. I don't know if that, if you were talking specifically about road dangers, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just
Road-
talking
Or in general.
about...
Yeah.
in
The big issue
general.
we have is the Grissom culvert. We don't see any highly dangerous damage still in place. Last year, the guys didn't have the grader all summer, which is why we didn't spend $13,000 on gravel. We didn't have the machine that puts it down on the road. They did use the backhoe, which is a very slow way to do it, and they used $7,000 worth of gravel. So they improved the roads as best they could with the machinery that they had. This year we have the grader, we have a backhoe, and we're going to rent equipment. We're going to hire contractors as we go, where we see that it's more efficient to have a contractor working over here while our DPW is working with their equipment on another road.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so
Is this paper ballot, secret ballot?
this is a secret ballot.
It is.
It is, correct. So if you take these out, everybody has a pencil. There are pencils on the voting tables over there if you want to grab some. And just tear off the bottom part where it has a number 1.
Like this?
And then return that to the box in the back of the room where your ballot went.
No,
Nope,
secret
you don't
ballot.
sign. Just mark yes or no.
Yeah, just mark yes or no. And
Oh, vote yes.
pardon me, louder. Number 1, just to take
Tear off the bottom, number
at the
1.
bottom of the sheet. See?
Tear it off like this.
You do the Monty Python walk.
Okay. Okay, while they're tallying the votes, we're going to move on to Article 3.
Close the ballot voting.
Everybody has voted? Yep, close the ballots. Which is, okay, Article 3, we can begin that process. It's the operations and highway budget. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $785,887 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately. This appropriation is to be funded, it says by water user fees, but that's a mistake. It's by taxes. I guess we want to make an amendment to this.
You want to open it for discussion, right?
Right, we haven't made a motion yet, so I want you to make somebody move it
You can move it with the new
Yeah.
bottom line.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion.
to accept it.
amend.
Okay, and a second?
I'll
A second. Now, we need We need an amendment to adjust that. It was a clerical error and needs to be clarified that it's not funded by water user fees, but by tax. Okay?
Yep.
You're looking at me like
Because there's another amendment, we don't,
there was a mistake.
we want to also introduce this with a new
I know,
bottom
but
line.
that's...
You want to do it separately?
Well, we can do it all as one, I suppose.
It's up to you.
Yeah, let's start by amending it to replace the water user fees
Yeah, that
Right.
the language is
to
incorrect.
taxation,
Okay.
tax, how do you, typically it
So
would
I'll make a
say...
motion that we amend this to say that it's paid for by taxes.
Okay, and I need a second?
Second.
Okay. Everybody understands the issue here? No questions? All those in favor, just raise your yellow sheet. Opposed? It's unanimous. Now that brings us back to the main motion. And Woody, you're going to speak to the budget?
Yes. So everybody got a copy of the detailed budget, and what I'm addressing right now is on the left-hand side, which is the operations and highway budget. That's all we're talking about right now. Can everybody hear me? Am I coming over the speakers? Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So first thing I need to say about this is this budget was put together by the commissioners back in January at the very beginning of our fiscal year. Then we held a budget hearing on February 7th, which a couple of you showed up at, and it was discussed in detail then with a few minor modifications. And now here we are a month later or more past that budget hearing, and from when we first prepared this budget, and a few things have happened that got the commissioners thinking we need to raise two of the line items to make sure we're safe for this year. The first, I'm going to go with the easier one to discuss, is we need basically $5,000 more money for the repairs and maintenance of our plow trucks. Just this past week, we had our Dodge Ram 2018 in the shop, and it came up with $4,300 in repairs. This next week, our Dodge Ram 2019 is going to be in the shop, and although we're not anticipating as large a repair, you never know. These trucks take a lot of beating when they're plowing our roads during the winter. But I think most everybody's been pretty happy with the conditions of the roads. Our DPW does a great job, but these trucks are getting up in age, and sometime in the not near too distant future, we're going to need to replace them. But right now, according to our DPW people, the trucks themselves are in good condition. It's basically most of the plow gear that is taking a beating. And anyway, like I said, $4,300 was a brand new bill. So we want to raise it by $5,000 to cover any future repairs that we don't even know about now, on top of what we currently budgeted for repairs and maintenance. We budgeted $10,000. You'll see that in the detailed line item under the highway and streets category. So that would go up to $15,000. Okay. Now, the second one, Mark's going to talk to in greater detail so you fully understand the ramifications, but I'll introduce it and give you a little background detail. You'll all remember, if you were here on Thanksgiving when we had our first big snowstorm, we only had one out of two full-time DPW staff. The other position was not filled yet. And that position was our current foreman, Jeff DiMartino. He was on the road that day for 18 hours. 18 hours to clear the road. Okay. We knew that's an untenable position. It's not sustainable. We've been trying to hire a second person for a long time. We did hire a second person on December 1st, but that person recently left us. So the other line item we feel we need to increase is the full-time salaries for the DPW position, and we want to increase that one by 20%. So if the full-time salaries originally budgeted at $120,560 goes up by 20%, we need to add another $24,000, I'm rounding, on top of that. But we'd also have to do that for overtime as well. We budgeted $25,000 for overtime, raise that by 20%, we're up to $30,000. So now we're talking about adding a grand total between repairs and maintenance and full-time salary to the highway and streets category of the budget. That goes up by $34,000. But I want Mark to talk a little bit about the whole issues we've had with salaried DPW positions and give you a little bit of background because he's been here longer than any of us.
So the village, like any other municipality and any other company, am I okay with, goes into the marketplace to hire somebody qualified to plow. The village district of Eidelweiss is not the easiest place to plow because we have two little mountains that have some pretty severe inclines to them. And if you can imagine trying to plow the S-turn that goes up to the top of Oak Ridge Road to the summit during a blizzard at night, you need somebody that knows what they're doing. We're putting these people into trucks that cost us over $100,000 to rig them out. And the next round of trucks are going to cost even more. The big truck that we have is an International 7400. When we replace that, if we do use that type of truck, if we have to replace that type of truck, we're looking at a price tag rigged out with a spreader and plows, wing plows, front plow, at over $200,000. The person that you put inside a $100,000 or a $200,000 rig better know what they're doing. Because when these things break, when they go off the road, it's real expensive. So we have been advertising and hiring. We got one person to show up in the fall that had a commercial driver's license and had a minimal amount of snow plowing experience, not in the state of New Hampshire, not in a snow country, not in an area that's got hills. Let's say that Cape Cod isn't known for its winter snowstorms. So we are competing with the construction companies in this area because you want your snowplow drivers to live close to where you are. They can't be driving for an hour to get here when a snowstorm starts to happen. We don't know what's happening at the top of Oak Ridge unless somebody goes and looks at it. I live at the pond level on Appinville Way. What happens on my road isn't what happens at the top of Oak Ridge Road. So these guys are out there before most of us think that we really have a snowstorm started, particularly paved hills that get iced up early in the going. The local companies in the area, the construction companies of size, constantly are running advertisements in the newspaper. I checked this week's newspaper. Two of them are continuing to run ads looking for commercial driver's licensed drivers. We aren't just hiring a CDL driver that's going to drive across country on highway. We need a guy that has the CDL license that can drive that type of truck, but is driving it on Oak Ridge Road in a snowstorm. So we need people that have plowing experience. And in order to get them to even apply for the job, we have to advertise the best price to be paid in this area. We had one guy show up. He met the minimal requirements. He asked for a little more money than we offered him, but we had to do it. We had to give him a little more than what he asked for. He signed up, he started. He did fine through December, January. In February, he had it. Our winter's not over. He voluntarily resigned and didn't show up for work anymore. Didn't give us any notice. He just is gone. So now we have Jeff. We have to keep Jeff's salary great for him. We have to advertise good prices to get good people to come in and operate our very expensive equipment. So that's why we had this discussion and we struggled over it, and we decided that we need to keep the roads open to get ambulances to people's houses. This is the way we look at it. We don't look at it as how nice it is to drive on our roads right after the snowstorm. Don't they do a great job? We worry about, are we going to wake up and hear that the ambulances couldn't get to somebody's house that was having a heart attack at midnight because we didn't have the driver? available to operate our equipment in the garage to keep the road open so that Madison ambulances could get to them. And this happens. So that's why we want to raise this number. We're hoping you go for it.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Do you have a total amount of the budget?
We have, right, but we haven't got to making that amendment yet.
Yes, I can give that to you.
So
Diana.
we do.
can.
I mean, somebody needs to make an amendment to adjust the 785,887 to my calculation, which is 819,887.
819,999.
Yep.
I'll make a motion
Okay,
to
so-
increase the bottom line of this operating budget to, I can't see that.
819,999.
But I thought you were just talking about increasing 34,000. So
Yes.
just, that was a rough number?
Yeah, it's
It's a rough number.
34,112.
Okay,
But
okay.
that number also
So
has
get-
the vehicle increase that,
Oh, okay.
that Wood had talked
Right,
about.
that's
Oh,
not
that was the
full-time.
five. That was the 5,000.
It's
Yep.
the 5,000 for the repairs and
Right.
maintenance, and then another $29,112 for
So-
full-time salary. That includes all overtime in
So
that as well.
for Doug, let's repeat that number again.
Okay,
819,999.
999.
You get that, Doug? Yes. Okay, so that's an amendment that you have moved.
made the amendment.
And seconded by
Second.
Nancy. Any questions? Any other concerns about any of the other line items that you see on the screen? This is your opportunity to ask questions about the budget.
This
We
is
break
just the
it down
amendment
by
we're voting
these
on.
line items here because this, we can only vote the bottom line, but this breaks down by category.
We're going
So,
to vote on the amendment first.
yep.
Can you make it a little crisper, please?
Yeah, I'll do the best I can. So, meanwhile, if we want to take a vote for his amendment, and a minute. Any better?
No.
That seems to be the best it could do. Okay, so,
it's in your handouts. This is in your handouts.
yeah, it's. No other questions regarding the rest of the budget? Let's vote on this amendment. All those in favor, I'll reread it just to make sure, everybody. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $819,999 for general municipal operations. The article does not include operations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately. Appropriation is to be funded by taxes. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Point of information, we have the results from our voting on Article 2. Article 2, yeses are 15, noes are 0. That's unanimous. Get that, Doug? Okay. On to Article 4. Article 4 reads, to see if the village will vote to
No,
raise...
we need to vote on the operating budget. We just
Oh, I'm
amended
sorry.
it.
We voted the amendment. Okay, let's go. One more time, guys. And now we're voting on the article as amended for the $819,999. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Article 4, the water system budget. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $258,000 for the purpose of the water budget. This appropriation is to be funded by water user fees.
I'll make a motion to move Article 2 to the floor.
Moved by
Or
Nancy,
Article 4, excuse me.
seconded
second.
by Mark. And who wants to speak on this?
I will. I don't need that.
We'll hear you at home without the...
Okay, so for the water budget, there's, if you look at the second page, you can see the total that we're looking to raise this year. And it's not much, it's $5,000, it's just slightly over what last year's was. So there's not a significant change anywhere here. A couple of the noticeable changes, one of them would be under water services, the bottom of the second page, telemetry, SCADA. We increased that from $5,000 last year to $20,000 this year, and that's because we're expecting a new computer for the SCADA system. We've actually already ordered the computer. We were actually expecting it in January. It hasn't come in yet for some technical issues on the supplier side, but once that comes in, we do need to pay for it. So we just have that extra money in there to keep that water system completely secure and to update that computer. In each of the areas, you can see that the water system pays for a percentage of some of the administrative costs for the year, the executive costs for the year, legal expenses for the year, legal employee benefits, some money into the general government buildings because that takes care of the pump houses. Those are all general government buildings. Then you've got a percentage for insurance that the water system pays because the water system is just as insured as everything else that the district owns. There is nothing that you will see through highway and streets for that affects the water budget. When you get to the second page, there are a couple of line items, one specifically for sand that we do raise a little money into the water system for, and that's because our equipment has been helping with the water system when the water operators are changing a curb stop or working on a leak. So we've had some expenses, so we're adding some expenses to the water system for those charges as they get occurred. And then you get down into the loan section. The equipment loans are separate, so those are all under the operations and highway. But the water does have the loan for the water tank. And that's been in existence for a couple of years now, and this is simply the annual payment that we have to make.
Any questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, and the rest is just the standard electricity, pumping, treatment, and that type of stuff for the water. So, any general questions on?
You want to mention how it's funded?
Yes. Could you?
What's the fee going to be for water?
We have already determined that we're going to decrease the water fee for this year. So it was $550 last year, and it's going to be $525 this year.
With the goal of going to 500 even next year.
Right.
We want to shift the burden of capital improvements to the water system out of the water fee and into taxation. Because that's the way the village did it for 30 years. And there was a board that changed that a few years ago. And we think that capital improvements should be done by taxation, which can be deducted if you file that way. Mm-hmm. And everybody participates in the improvements to the water system. Operation of the water system is paid out of the fee.
Right.
The cost of electricity to pump it from 500-foot wells to 1,200 feet is very expensive, and all the houses that are on both hills. It's like we have 2 skyscrapers that we're feeding water to. That's really expensive. So we're going to make the water bill try to stay flat by having taxation voted on to do major capital improvements from here on out.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, let's quickly, to see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $258,000 for the purpose of the water budget. Appropriations to be funded by the water user fees. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Bring us to Article 5, Roads and Ditches. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,000 for the purpose of creating ditches or repairing existing ditches on VDOE roads, including ledge removal as needed. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. You have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve this article.
Second?
Okay. Anybody want to speak
I'll
on
speak
that?
to it.
Yep.
This summer, we looked at some of the damage that was caused by the events in July of 2023, and with that DPW. And they pointed out there are ditches in the village that have ledge. Ledge is granite, rock, but of a massive type. It's not a boulder whose top is sticking out of it. It's a large piece of area that is solid granite. This usually happens at the top of Oak Ridge Road, but it happens all over the village. So we've identified a number of places, over a dozen places where we have ditches, but we have granite in it where the water has to come out of the ditch because it hits solid granite, that you can't make a ditch unless you bring in a special piece of equipment that jackhammers the ledge. This has never been done. It's not covered by FEMA because FEMA will only reimburse us the 75% of things that were damaged during the storm. Well, that ledge has been there since before Eidelweiss. When they cut it, they didn't hammer it. They just went over it and started the ditch again on the next side of it. At the top of Oak Ridge in the S-turn, we have a piece of granite that throws the water out of the ditch onto the pavement where it turns to ice. For the first time, we're going to hire a piece of equipment out of Ossipee, out of a gravel pit, to come in and just hammer everywhere that we identify in a prioritized order to get the ledge into the shape of the ditch at that point so the water flows through it and doesn't come out onto the roads. It's even worse when it's a gravel road that has ledge in the ditches because the water coming out of the ditch washes the gravel out. And they're constantly going back and fixing these things. For the first time that I've been here, which is since 1979, the village is going to actually bring in a piece of equipment and start to make these ditches work by getting the granite out of there, the ledge.
Any questions? No questions. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Bring us to Article 6, Engineering of the Grisson Road Culvert. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the purpose of engineering and permitting for replacing the Grisson culvert with a metal arch culvert. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion for Article 6.
6.
Moved by Mark and
Second?
second by Nancy.
So we mentioned the Grisson culvert before. When the village was first built in the early 60s, they wanted the road to come across this ravine that had a year-round brook. That's part of the Banfield Brook system that feeds the pond, and then the output of the pond joins this brook that comes down through Grisson, goes through Bergdorf, goes into our wetlands. We have 16-acre wetlands that all the water from the pond joins the brooks and then heads across Route 113, just a little bit up the road from the entrance sign. In 2015, the engineers submitted a design to New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services to get permission to build an expensive solution to the original metal culvert. A 48-inch metal culvert was put at the bottom of the ravine. They filled in the ravine to have a road go straight through it, and we put a water main in the top of this 14-foot ravine in the road. That culvert, after 40 years, has failed. There is a sinkhole in the middle of Grisson. On top of the fact that that whole thing is like a dam, when the water comes down in these big storms, that 48-inch culvert can't handle the debris that comes down the mountain in the rapid flooding that happens. It carries trees down with it. It clogs the culvert. The water builds up. The water comes over the top of the road. It starts to take the road away. This has happened twice. It happened in 2012, and it happened in 2023. It takes the top 7 feet of the road right off of it, exposing our water main, and the water takes the water main right out of place. We got $7,200 back to fix the culvert. We didn't get any money back to fix the road. After we fixed the road and we made it passable again, then all of a sudden this hole started showing up right over the culvert. 14 feet down, the hole goes to the culvert that was put in 62. The state says you can't just replace that 48-inch culvert. The design does not work for what you have here. We're environmental services. We're protecting the environment. We're going to approve your engineering design for a 12-foot high, 12-foot wide, 6-foot high, precasted concrete culvert. It's almost a bridge. It's 80 feet long, and we got an estimate that it would be over $500,000 to put in the precasted one. The engineer thought that an alternative design that FEMA said, we like your alternative design better than, we don't think we're going to finance this thing for $500,000. We think there's another way to do it. And then the other design is we have to take the 14 feet of material out and our water main, get it down to the bottom of the natural brook, put in concrete footers the whole way, the 80 feet, and basically build a Quonset hut. It comes as a kit, you bolt it together, and you make a metal frame as opposed to the precasted concrete, the entire length of it. So it's a natural bottom. It's not a metal culvert. It's not a concrete. It's a metal arch on concrete footing that goes across the bottom of the road down in the ditch, and then refill it back in and put the water main back. So this $15,000 is to design this so that the state can approve it, and then we say to FEMA, we think that this is a lower cost alternative. Will you give us 75% back on this? So this is just for the design of a lower cost solution to Grissom.
Any questions?
Do we have a price on this new design, or is that waiting for the design to happen?
You can't price it until you see what the design is. This is what we're faced with.
Right. But it's not going to be $500,000.
We think it's going to be less.
The goal is not to have it.
Right, yeah, the goal is to not have it be that, because we know that's just not going to happen.
The real answer is we find out things when we go to market and ask what it is that you'll do now, today. What are the contractors going to say today to this design? Because the dollar amount we had for the original precasted concrete design didn't come in as a hard number. We will do this project for this amount. It says, we'll give you an estimate that it's going to be over $500,000. They gave an exact number. Give or take 15%. It's like you don't have a contract, you have an estimate. It's difficult.
Any other questions? Okay. I'll read it once more. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the purpose of engineering and permitting for replacing the Grissom culvert with a metal arch culvert. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Brings us now to Article 7. This is for IT services for the VDOE Administration Office. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,100 for the purpose of IT services for the VDOE Administrative Office. Computer systems and equipment. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. We have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Who would like to speak?
I'll be speaking.
Okay.
All right. A lot of you, or some of you, know that 2024 was kind of a nightmare year, especially at the beginning. 2 previous commissioners resigned on the same day, leaving poor Mark alone. He had to go to the Superior Court to get Nancy and I appointed, and then we were voted in as elected officers at last year's annual meeting. And then right about that same time, in early March, our old administrator, she resigned too. And right about that same time, we had an attack on our IT systems, and we had $14,000 stolen from our bank account. And the more the three of us started getting into what was going on from what was a legacy problem, was we found all these passcodes that hadn't been changed in years, and to access the passcodes, that wasn't encrypted. And what else happened? We had to shut down everything, so all of a sudden anything that was being paid automatically on a debit card, or what used to be a debit card, bills weren't getting paid, emails weren't coming through, people couldn't even reach us on the phone because the phone systems weren't working. It was a nightmare. And the three of us looked at each other and said, none of us here are IT crypto security experts. Okay? We did have a volunteer who's a part-time resident in the Village District of Eidelweiss, who works for Google. Yeah, he knows his stuff, but guess what? When the you-know-what hits the fan, you need somebody to be in the office right away working on and attacking the problem, and we didn't have that. So, again, it was a nightmare situation. So, really, the solution is very simple. You have to hire an outside firm that's what they do. All they do is cybersecurity and IT management. So that's all this article is asking for, is $4,100 to be able to hire a firm that does exactly that, so that all of us can breathe a lot easier at nighttime knowing that our systems are secured, that people aren't going to rip us off of money, which is your money. So it's really pretty cut and dried and pretty simple.
Any questions?
Did I say something?
Oh, absolutely.
Would have pointed out that the village had an ACH transfer done illegally, and the Madison police investigated it and got search warrants to the J.P. Morgan Chase, who was the clearinghouse for ACH transfers. We were doing ACH transfers into the bank accounts of the employees, direct deposit. Somebody outside of the state of New Hampshire got into our system and did an illegal transfer of the $14,000 in change. It was close to $14,500. We pay for insurance. We have our insurance policy with Primex. Primex this week has sent us a check. We're getting the money back. So we had to come in under budget without the $14,000 last year. We had surprise bills for the greater of $32,000. Long story short, we came in under budget. For years, the village operated with having a volunteer putter around and help us with computer systems, no matter what the board was. Those days are over. When they're hitting municipalities for their SCADA, the SCADA system is the system that controls the water system. It says this tank needs water. It communicates to the SCADA system and has the well at the DPW yard stop pumping 170 gallons a minute through 6,800 feet of piping getting into the system. Those are under attack by foreign countries all over the country. They're sending us training courses for us to become educated on how to protect the SCADA system. We can't have volunteers do any of this anymore. We learned the hard way. When we came into office, when we got the computers back working again, we were running blind. No phones, no computer systems. We found out that the previous boards let the passwords for everything, for all our bank accounts, for everything, in a spreadsheet on the computer, in a spreadsheet called passwords. Those days are over. We need a professional IT. We have these keys that we got through a grant to plug into the PCs that do two-step verification on anything that happens with our PCs. We got these things. We need this warrant article. We need this money every year to have a company who's insured and trained and responsible for this stuff, so that we don't have to spend all of our time chasing the insurance companies, talking to the police department, wondering where our money went. Please vote for this.
Just one other thing, just like Mark said, it was the ACH transfer. That's how employees got paid, which in the past, previous boards and administrators, they paid all the payrolls on their own internally. Back in Nancy's days, they used to use a payroll service, which is a much safer way of doing it. We've gone back to that. We're using a professional payroll service. We're not doing payroll internally with that sort of inherent weakness of doing ACH transfers on our own. So immediately we made that situation better, but there's a lot more to cybersecurity than just that. So, and that's again why we need an outside firm to do this for us.
And yes, Dinah.
This will be a line item on our budget going forward.
Right.
It will.
Right.
The intent is, if this warrant article passes, then next year, IT will be a line item in the standard budget for each year moving forward.
Right. Any other questions? Okay. We'll read once more. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,100 for the purpose of IT services for the Video Administration Office, computer systems, and equipment. Funding for this appropriation is to be raised by taxation. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Article 8. In regards to the copier scanner lease contract, to see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $888 for the purpose of leasing of a new printer scanner for the VDOE office administration office. Funding for this appropriation is to be raised by taxation. We have a motion.
Doug will make a motion. You want to make this motion? Yeah.
And seconded by
Nancy.
Second. It's not how you make a motion.
Okay. Does somebody want to speak about this?
Doug is.
Okay, the goal of this article is to replace the printer scanner unit in the district office with a much better unit. To give you some context, the current printer scanner is 4 years old, purchased from a retail, what I would call a box store. There's no maintenance support for this unit. Doesn't work very well. Jen tells me that to scan something, she's had to feed it one page at a time, believe it or not. And the other downside of this type of solution is the toner for this kind of unit is very expensive. The unit that we're proposing is a commercial office grade color printer scanner from a local company that specializes in these units. It's a 48-month lease. This warrant article of $888 is for the first year of the lease, $74 a month for 12 months. And as we just discussed on the IT services going forward, this will be included in the operating budget. The unit comes with a comprehensive maintenance program that includes parts, labor, and toner. The printer is connected to and communicates with the vendor by the internet. There's a good chance that if there's something going wrong in the unit, that the vendor will know about it before Jen does, our administrator. It's kind of amazing. The cost of the maintenance program is based on the number of copies we actually print. 1.2 cents for black and white, 8 cents for color. Based on the last 4 years of print volumes that we were able to get off the current old unit, this variable maintenance cost is estimated to be about $955 a year. And this is already in the office expense in the budget as toner. I believe this will be a cost reduction over what's already in the budget. Based on some research and estimating, the annual combined cost of the lease and maintenance for this unit appears to be less than the annual cost of just toner for a new box store unit. Amazing. And the retail store unit would have no maintenance support. So we're on our own. Not a good solution. The New Hampshire legislature has enacted a law that allows municipalities to scan and store records to eliminate paper. There's a gang that's been working on our boxes of paper. We started with 120 boxes, believe it or not. We're down to about 50 now. But this process of scanning and storing records requires a scanner that can produce what's called PDF/A format. The A refers to an archival format. The current unit in the office doesn't have this capability. The new unit does. It's a technical format that's used to do that. So in summary, 4 key benefits from this proposal: efficiency in the office. Second, full maintenance and support, which we don't have now. Third, I believe it's going to be a cost reduction overall versus the retail unit option. And number 4, the PDFA archival format. So as your district clerk, I'm responsible for the district records, and I really need this. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $888 for the purpose of leasing of a new printer scanner for the VDOE Administration Office. Funding for this appropriation is to be raised by taxation. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Article 9, gravel. To see if the village district will vote to appropriate the sum of $13,000 for the purpose of gravel. This special article is a special warrant article per RSA 32:3-4-6, I guess, D, lots of letters. And RSA 32:7B. So, not that any of you know what that is, because I don't. You do, but not. And the point being, the funding for this appropriation will be from the unassigned fund.
Make a motion to
Is-
put this to the floor with an amendment.
Second.
Okay. I'm going to give this to Doug anyway. So okay. So this is
And other road improvements.
okay.
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to amend it as what he just gave you, the language.
Okay, the amendment is adding some language, so we'll say, I mean, let's get the sum, but to vote appropriate the sum of $13,000 for the purpose of gravel and other road improvements. That's the change, and other road improvements. We had a second for the
Second.
amendment?
Second for the amendment.
Okay, so that was Mark and
I amended, she seconded.
Nancy. You got that, Doug, for the amendment? Okay. And who wants, you want to
speak
speak,
to it.
Mark?
So, as I said at the beginning, this is one of the warrant articles as part of the strategy of managing cash flow through the FEMA reimbursement. The reason that this warrant article has the dollar value of $13,000 is last year's operating budget had the standard line item of $20,000 to purchase gravel. Like I said before, we didn't have the grader because we had to send the grader to the dealer in southern New Hampshire, and it took much longer for them to fix the grader at a greater expense than they had first told us. It went from being down there for a couple of weeks at a price of $11,000 to being there all summer for a grand total of $32,000 to fix everything they found after it got there. The point of that was we didn't have the grader for the entire summer while the grader was down in Pembroke, New Hampshire at the dealership getting repair after repair. It didn't get maintained the way that it should have for the 10 years that we owned it. We owned the grader outright, as a side note. Because we didn't spend the $13,000, we only spent $7,000, and the road crew used it to fix the bigger problems with the backhoe, which is a slower process. We're asking you to approve letting us use the $13,000 that wasn't spent last year that we put into the unassigned fund balance, to use it as part of the FEMA pursuit of fixing the roads and getting the invoices to them and seeing the turnaround of it. So we are not asking for additional money. We're sticking with our strategy of using the basic operating budget, and this warrant article lets us access money we didn't spend last year that should have gone onto the roads. And the amendment is just to let us use it for things other than just gravel. If we want to fix some hot top with it on the side of a road that got washed out, the amendment allows us to spend some of it on fixing hot top, for example. So it will go towards fixing roads under the FEMA strategy.
Any questions? Okay, we're going to vote on the amendment, which is adding the and other road improvements. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Brings us back to the original article as amended, which is to see if the village district will vote to appropriate the sum of $13,000 for the purpose of gravel and other road improvements. This special article warrant per all those RSA numbers. Funding for this appropriation will be from the unassigned fund. All those in favor? All those opposed, it's unanimous. Okay. What is this? Okay, Article 10, we're talking about water lines. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 for the purpose of the engineering water lines from Aspen to Bergdorf, including the addition of isolation valves on Bergdorf and Grisson, and the creation of a bid package. This appropriation is to be funded by taxation. You have a motion?
I'll make the
Mark?
motion.
Seconded by Nancy. Mark?
Yep. Earlier, I talked about the Grisson culvert, and the water line that goes through the Grisson culvert is the only water line that feeds that entire area. That's Grisson Road, Bergdorf, Constance Place, Granville, and the houses out on 113 that are part of Eidelweiss. There is a second way that water could enter this area, and it's off of Aspen. There is one house at the beginning of Bergdorf near the intersection with Aspen that has the water line coming down Bergdorf just to feed that house. It dead ends at that house. Then you travel further down Bergdorf, you come to the culvert that takes the water from Grisson. It also got damaged, but not as severe as the 14-foot ravine that makes up the Grisson culvert. On the other side of the Bergdorf culvert, further down Bergdorf, is a house that was built by Habitat Humanity. They brought the water line the other way to that house, and it's connected to the water system. So there's a piece of Bergdorf Road from the first house near Aspen to the second house on the other side of the culvert that we could connect a water line. It would be a secondary way of water being able to get into that area, which would reduce the risk of us panicking, trying to fix whatever nature does to the Grisson culvert and tries to get that entire area off of our water system. State law through DES requires us to pay to have water delivered to the houses that have this kind of disaster where the water main isn't supplying it, meaning we have to truck water to people's houses every day until we get the water main fixed. If Grisson doesn't get fixed and that entire thing gets washed out, it could be weeks before we do it. If we have this other way, we are improving the water system by having the loop closed. We have two ways of getting water in there, which improves the system genetically, but we're also reducing the risk of being in a disaster situation if Grisson gets knocked out and we can't get water to them at all. So this does the engineering of about 250 feet of new water main to connect the first house on Bergdorf to the second house on Bergdorf and closes the loop.
And just so that everybody knows, that area is Grisson, Bergdorf, Constance, Granville, and 113 from Grisson to the Eidelweiss sign. So it's a significant amount of houses we're talking about that should something fail and we aren't able to close this loop and get water to there, that we would need to hire somebody to bring water to all of those houses.
Any questions?
Just for clarification, you have to do the engineering before you can do the work, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the engineering will set up the big bid package so that we will have it to give to the contractors to get the bids for the work. And we do intend on doing that this year, so that we'll have full numbers for
Next year.
if we can fund it this year, we will, and if not, then it will come into a warrant article next year.
Actually,
We
Any
should
other
be able to
questions?
fund it this year.
yeah.
Yes.
Is that independent of the work being done with the culvert?
The Grisson culvert?
Yes.
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 We may put two isolation valves as part of this project
Either side.
on either side of the Grisson culvert so that if something happened to that water main, we can just shut it off at both ends. If water can come in through Bergdorf as a result of this, and the Grisson culvert doesn't get fixed fast enough where the next disaster takes it out, we want to be able to shut that off and let all those houses work off the new Bergdorf connection, and we can take our time fixing the Grisson Road problem because the water system all works.
Right. Yeah, and it'll also be a benefit when we do that road work, that we will have another way to supply those houses.
And just to clarify what Nancy was pointing at is, right now, we think these bid packages are going to come in at a price where we can fund it with existing capital reserves with a fund that we have for the water system without raising water fees or taxes to get this new water main done.
Oh, that would be good. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll read it once more. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 for the purpose of the engineering water lines from Aspen to Bergdorf, including the addition of isolation valves on Bergdorf and Grisson, and the creation of a bid package. This appropriation is to be funded by taxation. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Article 11, the DPW Well B Engineering. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of engineering and permitting for placing a second well in the DPW A well area. Funds for this appropriation will come from water funds. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to move this to the floor.
Mark?
Second.
Mark?
I'll speak to it, yes.
Yep.
We have two well sites for the water system. One of the well sites is an original Great Northern Land Corporation installation called Muddy Beach. It's off Eidelweiss Drive as you're leaving Eidelweiss. You're actually outside of Eidelweiss, traveling towards Town Line Road, and you'll come across property that Eidelweiss owns that is not in the village district of Eidelweiss. We actually have a couple of parcels like this. We have an island in Big P that we own that's an acre of land that is not in the village district of Eidelweiss. But Muddy Beach has a well field and it has a pump house that you can see right from Eidelweiss Drive. You pass it as you're heading towards Town Line Road. It has two bedrock wells, meaning it's the type of well that you would have installed at a house, as opposed to a gravel-packed municipal well, which no house owner could afford or would have to put one in, but it's a much greater capacity well, capable of delivering many more gallons of water than these drill wells. So we have an old well field that is drilled down through granite that supplies a lot less water than a newer gravel-packed municipal well that's at the DPW yard out on Route 113 near Coleman Cement, near the gun club. You know where the office is. We have a well field there. We have a gravel-packed municipal well that delivers 170 gallons a minute. It supplies all the water the village will use at full development. All 1,100 lots are built on. It's wall-to-wall houses in here. That well will deliver the water into the future. It wasn't here when the original wells were put in for Eidelweiss. Muddy Beach is the only surviving well site from the original wells that were put in to supply the beginnings of Eidelweiss when there were only like 60 houses here when I moved here. There's 500 houses here now. The Muddy Beach well field has had a problem with uranium for quite some time. The state has a level of uranium that they say is acceptable if you stay below this range. If you go above it, they have a procedure that you have to follow where you have to send out a hard copy letter to all of the users of the water system and tell them that the testing has shown that there are unacceptable amounts of uranium in the water. They don't tell you you have to stop doing it. They tell you you have to stop watching it, even though it has gone over it. That well has been at the line for years. Under some circumstances, it's suspected that after drought seasons, that the well is pulling water from further away underground. Whatever's happening underground, it tickles that line when we test it. It stays below it by a hair, and the state's fine. It goes above it by a hair, up. They tell us now you have to test it every month for 3 months to see whether it's staying above the line. We would test it, and we'd go back down below the line. Last fall, it stayed above the line one test cycle longer than it ever did before. And we had decided that we wanted to start planning to get away from this well before we actually arrived at that. Coincidentally, we voted on it, and then we got the test results and found out, oh, We had to do this. It wasn't us getting ahead of the curve here. It actually were on the curve. We had decided that we did not want to put in a filtration system at the Muddy Beach well because we were hearing the cost of disposing of the uranium that you filter out of the water before you send it to people's houses is incredibly expensive. And that would be ongoing fixed costs of doing it that way. When we have a well field that requires no filtration at all, it's in high quality aquifer that's capable of us drawing 170 gallons a minute. The only thing we do with that water is we adjust the pH level because the rain is a little acidic. It filters through 50 feet of sand down to get into the aquifer. The aquifer actually runs out along Route 113. Silver Lake, the chain of ponds, the pond that you see near the gun club is all part of an underground river. The largest aquifer in the northeastern United States is right on 113, and we have a big straw down into it. So, in short, what we decided to do was not invest in a sketchy, muddy beach, but head towards having a second gravel-packed municipal well at the DPW well site where we can take advantage of the existing infrastructure that's already there, the treatment of the water that raises the pH level, actually lowers the pH level.
Lowers it.
And connects to the piping system. The control systems are all there. We're just going to have a secondary well. Should anything happen to the well that we put in 1995, the physical well itself, we just switch over to this new well that we're proposing that we start the engineering of. And the state says, we like this plan. Until you actually get this fully developed, we're going to tell you that the Muddy Beach well needs to stay classified as an active well. If you need to supply water from it, you need to have it available to go until you get this B well. The A well is the original well at DPW 1. The B well will be the new one that this is the beginning of the engineering of. We have to keep Muddy Beach online active in case we have to turn it on. We have to continue to test it. We're afraid in continuing to test it, we have to send out a $500 notification to everybody, even though we're not using it. We have to tell you Muddy Beach has unacceptable amounts of uranium, and we can write on the notification, and we're not using it.
But we still have to send it.
So they want a backup no matter what. And they're saying until you get your new backup in place, which we like, you have to keep this old backup ready to go. And if it has uranium, then we may tell you you have to buy the equipment and put it in there, even though you're trying to get a better well set up. They will not let us not have a backup. And we don't really want to not have a backup. Right. Follow that?
Any questions? Everybody understands, okay. To see if the village will vote to see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of engineering and permitting for placing a second well in the DPW A well area. Funds for this appropriation will come from water funds. All those in favor? All those opposed? Could you do that again? In favor? Opposed? One opposition. And I think there's 15?
Yeah, so that'll be 14 to 1.
14 to 1. Okay.
Just want to point out that this water article doesn't raise any money in taxation. It's
No.
all going to be funded by funds we already have.
Okay. Moving on. Article 12. Executive stipends. To see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,376 for the purpose of increasing executive stipends as follows. Treasurer, it'll be an additional $400 per month. Moderator goes up, well, it's a one-time thing. That's a monthly. The moderator is annual. It's not additional. Time out. I'm wrong. The whole thing is additional, but individually, this is what the pay rates will be. Treasurer will receive $400 monthly. Moderator, annually $367. Clerk, $367. Supervisors of the checklist, $367, and commissioners will be at $400 per month. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. Do we have a motion to
Make a motion to move Article
move
12
Article
to
12?
the floor.
And
Second.
seconded by Mark. Who would like to speak?
Okay. It is pretty sad, but Dinah has been our treasurer for 18 years, and she has never received an increase of her monthly stipend. The same goes for the commissioners, same goes for all the other officials listed. The supervisors of the checklist out back there, the ones that gave you your ballot and take the votes, they have been doing this at a lower amount, like I said, for ever. You know? So we just are putting out this to say, did the commission, did you guys want to increase some of these? If somebody had a specific line that they wanted to change, then we could modify the bottom line for the warrant article by that amount, if there was somebody that we didn't want to pay. But overall, we believe this is very fair. We did a percentage, which is why it came up to bizarre numbers like $367, because we just did a percentage over what they were making prior. And these are the numbers that we're proposing. I think it's pretty self-explanatory as to, and we hope that you will vote for this.
Any questions? Yes. No.
No,
These are the,
this will be
excuse
the
me,
new
excuse me.
amount.
Currently, the
These are the
commissioners,
rates that will be paid.
Right.
When I said additional, the $5,376 is an addition, correct?
right,
The
but,
first year.
yeah, for the first year.
Yes, and
By
that
way
will
of
be,
example,
that will go forward into the budget, just like previous articles that we voted
I think we're
once
trying
this
to,
year.
for
Correct,
example,
but-
the commissioners, we each get $300 a month stipend.
And this will be 400.
Yeah.
We're just raising it to 400. And just in case you're interested, the selectmen from Madison get $7,000 a year, and they're adding 2 more selectmen, so that's an additional $14,000.
They meet every other week.
And they meet every other week. We meet every week.
Let me throw in that the first time I was a commissioner was in 1986, and this is what we were getting paid. So I can't remember back further than 1986 that it wasn't the amounts that were changing for the first time in all this time.
Any other questions? We're ready to vote. So, to see if the village will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,376 for the purpose of increasing executive stipends. I'm not going to go through the whole list again. Funding will be from taxation. You all know that this is a one-time article. Going forward, that amount of money will be added to the budget. Right?
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Article 13, sale of the VDOE-owned lot. To see if the district will vote to approve the sale of the VDOE-owned lot at 20 Bristenstock Drive by auction. As regulated by the VDOE's Green Space Ordinance, the sale shall be accomplished by a sealed bid auction to all abutters of the land. Minimum bid price shall be $16,900. The VDOE land sold to an abutter shall be permanently merged with the abutting land of the winning bidder. By the winning bidder at the expense of the winning bidder. All closing costs and recording fees shall be paid by the winning bidder to the closing agent. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to move this to the floor.
Mark moves
Second.
it. Nancy seconds. Who wants to
Yes.
speak?
The village owns over 100 lots in the village district of Eidelweiss. That's some lots that we bought when we bought the village from the original developer back in 1978. We paid over $300,000 to buy the Village District of Eidelweiss from the developer. Then we went through the New Hampshire legal system and had it become a municipality as a part of the political boundaries of the town of Madison. We are not a subsidiary to Madison. We are an independent municipality. There were questions over the years about what Eidelweiss does with these lots. It went to the vote last year. We proposed a new ordinance that articulates exactly how anybody could buy one of these lots from us. The main goal was that we want to preserve all of these lots as green space. As we continue to have people build in here, there's going to be more houses, less trees as they're cleared. You see some sections of Eidelweiss where they're half-acre lots and there's a house on every lot. Eidelweiss could become all house after house after house. And they voted last year to try to protect these lots that we own as green space. Except if there was an existing property owner that wanted to buy a lot that actually abuts them, right next to them or behind them, they could apply to the village district by paying $75 to cover administrative fees and show that they're earnest in doing this. Then the commissioners would put it on the warrant. And this is the first example. There's a house on Bristenstock where there's a current house. They want to retire there. They want to build a garage, and they want to acquire the lot next door to put the garage on. The ordinance requires that the lot get merged. It can't stay a separate lot where a new house with a new septic system goes up, and we didn't protect the green space. So what this does is allows us to put that land back on the tax rolls, because if they buy this lot, if they win the auction, or if the abutters win the auction, that lot gets merged and now it becomes part of the tax system again, where Eidelweiss doesn't pay tax on the 100 lots that it owns.
Right.
So it stays green space because we don't have a new house there. They could put an auxiliary building like a garage. I think Madison zoning even allows an in-law apartment maybe. But we get a minimum of what the assessed value is that the town assessors have put on the lot. In this case, this lot on Bristenstock has an assessed value of $16,900. So should you approve this right now, it goes to Jen, and Jen has to send out registered mail to all of the abutting lots, which would mean the houses, the lots on both sides of this lot and the lot behind it. So there'd be three entities that could bid on this. The three bidders have to be bidding a number that's greater than the $16,900. So it's a competitive bid. They know they're bidding against someone else, possibly. They don't know if they're not bidding. The other ones aren't bidding. Then if they win, they have to pay to have that lot merged by going to the Madison Planning Board and getting approval to merge the lot. It becomes one lot forever that they now are paying taxes on as one new bigger lot. And then they have to pay to get this recorded at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So this is a question of whether you
questions?
want to sell this lot through an auction or not.
Right. Any questions? Carrie?
I'll use my outdoor voice. How big is the lot? And what happens if they don't merge it?
They have to merge it or they don't own it.
Right, it's required as
But
part.
if they pay for it,
They get their money back. And it goes to the next highest bidder.
Yeah.
And if there's no higher bidder, then it's our lot. And we didn't lose any money.
and how big is this lot that we're talking about?
I think it's 0.6 of an acre. It has a brook running through it, which is why it was never built.
It's what?
It has a brook running through it, which is why it was never built.
Oh,
But it has enough room for them to get the garage on it.
Were you worried that they might try and build a whole new?
yeah, absolutely.
You can't under...
We know what
You
They-
can't
they
under the
cannot.
zoning regulations.
Yeah.
We're requiring it has to be merged for them to own it.
Okay, they have zoning regulations, and then there's tons of variants that happen. Look at the house on Middle Peak.
They'd have to subdivide it. They can't subdivide it under the regulations. They can't get an exception to subdivide it. It needs a 2-acre minimum to subdivide it back out again.
You can't make a non-conforming lot more non-conforming.
Right.
Correct.
Even when they merge it, it's still non-conforming under Madison zoning because Madison needs a minimum of 2 acres for a new house. If they add this to their existing house lot, they already have a house on, they can't meet that 2-acre minimum at all. Not even close.
Any other questions? Yes.
Where does the money for this lot go? To general funds or?
It'll be revenue.
Yeah, it'll be revenue, and we have not, and then it'll be up to the commissioners whether we want to put it into a capital reserve or, to protect it for future use, or if it were to be dispersed. Given the amount of money, I think we will protect it and use it for future use. That would probably be our general agreement.
We could also use it to offset taxes
Yes.
at the end of the year.
But do we need to specify where we would like the money to go now, or?
That is not part of the ordinance, but if somebody has a specific thing as to where they wanted to go, feel free to speak up.
No, I have no.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody else had a question?
You said something?
I didn't catch your name.
Oh,
My name
Yes.
is Fran Keenan.
Sorry?
Fran Keenan.
any other questions? Are we ready to vote? I'm going to read it once more to see if the district will vote to approve the sale of the VDOE-owned lot at 20 Bristenstock Drive by auction. As regulated by the VDOE's Green Space Ordinance, the sale shall be accomplished by a sealed bid auction to all abutters of the land. Minimum bid price shall be $16,900. The VDOE land sold to an abutter shall be permanently merged with the abutting land of the winning bidder. By the winning bidder, at the expense of the winning bidder, all closing costs and recording fees shall be paid by the winning bidder to the closing agent. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, Article 14. To see if the district will vote to ratify the new tower agreement with the town of Conway. Now, do you...
I'll make this,
You wanna talk
make a motion
this?
to move this article to the floor with an amendment.
Okay,
Second.
what's the amendment?
The amendment is on the slide.
Okay, but I'm
We're
showing
going
up
to amend
here.
this, let's see, we're going to,
Do they have this in their package too?
Yes, they do. It's the last page.
so let's see, we have two warrant articles, we're going to get rid of one of them.
Yes.
It will do it the way you want to do it, Bob. We're going to recommend that we vote Article 14 down
Correct.
as it is, without an amendment,
Okay,
and that we amend Article 15, and that's the only one we're actually going to
Discuss.
discuss.
okay, I have
So I'll
a
take that-
motion to,
So make a motion, yeah,
I'll make a motion to move this to the floor as is.
Article
With the
14.
recommendation, we vote it down.
okay.
Second.
Second, are there any questions about the process here? We're going to vote this down and then discuss Article 15, and he has amendment for Article 15.
And just so persons know, the reason that we're voting it down is there is no actual agreement that has yet been met or put together for the town of Conway using our, so that's why we're saying, let's pass on this one right now. We were hoping to have it, and we don't.
You're recommending we should vote no.
Correct.
Yes.
I'll explain in more detail once we
Yeah.
get through this.
All right, all those in favor, again, we're voting it down. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous that it's defeated. Now,
Okay.
so I'm going to read Article 15, which discusses the Sheriff's Tower Agreement. And this is to see if the district will vote to ratify the Sheriff's Tower Agreement. Now, this is where you want to...
Make the amendment.
I'll make a motion that we move this to the floor with an amendment.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded.
And the amendment is, in your handouts, it's the...
To see if the VDOE legislative body would vote? That paragraph,
Yes.
right? So I'm going to read what his amendment is. The amendment is to see if the VDOE legislative body would vote in favor of advising the VDOE governing body to pursue the lease renewal agreement with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department and any other agencies using our premises with direct payment of monetary consideration. This has been moved.
Yep, let me explain.
And second.
So, back in the 60s, when Eidelweiss was laid out by a surveyor as a 5 square mile area that they purchased from the Kennett Corporation, and they were going to subdivide it into half-acre lots and smaller lots on the water, they hired Alvin T. Coleman to be the construction company that cut the roads out of the wilderness and started to build this development. In the process, Alvin T. Coleman made some deals with Great Northern Land Corporation, which were 3 lawyers in downtown Boston that had the vision of developing what would be called Eidelweiss. And they're going to sell these lots and build houses and get us to where we are today. One of the things that was agreed upon between Great Northern Land Corporation and Alvin T. Coleman was to carve out a little piece of land at the top of Oak Ridge at the summit. And you see a cellular tower structure near our water facility at the top of the hill. So anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, if you drive all the way to the top of Oak Ridge and you're at the summit where the overlook is, and there's a red building that has next to it cell towers. Coleman owns a right to that land for 99 years. So maybe somebody's offspring here will see the day that Eidelweiss takes possession of that land back.
2050.
Won't be us.
It won't be us.
So the cell tower's up there on that side of the road, and that's owned by some entity that has some kind of arrangement. What reason I bring this up is that WMWV radio actually broadcasts from there. They have 2 radio stations that they broadcast from that tower. So the radio station operates out of the top of Eidelweiss. The signal comes from there. They pay $500 a month, which comes to us as revenue. And they also pay a one-time annual amount of money.
Yes.
So it's at least $500 a month that we get as revenue because they're on the tower that Coleman has the rights to have on our property for 99 years. Now the Sheriff's Department comes along a few years ago and says, this is a great location because it's 1,200 feet. It's at the bottom of the Mount Washington Valley. If you're coming down Route 16, if you see this little mountain, it's Eidelweiss that you're looking at from in front of where Aubuchon's used to be, where Bee's Cafe. If you're coming across the bridge and you start to see Oak Hill, you're looking at the towers on top or in Eidelweiss. The Sheriff's Department wanted to take advantage of this location because it's strategic, it's high, and it has a road that we pay for, a road that we're $200,000 in debt because we paved the first 19 house numbers at the bottom. It's an expensive road to maintain. We plow it, we sand it, we salt it. You can get there 24 hours, 7 days a week, which is part of the agreement the Sheriff's Department has. We have a building at the top of it that's a remnant of when we used to have this unbelievable swimming pool that hung out over the scenic overlook. They had a building up there that they called the Cabana. The reason it's called the Cabana was it was a cabana for the pool. I don't know if it had cabana boys or what happened there. I'm sure there are some colorful stories. But the building is there. We use it. We have space that the EPOA stores stuff and operates out of there. Years ago, a board of the village district signed an agreement with the Sheriff's Department that allowed them to use one end of the building to house equipment, use land outside the building right next to it to put a communications tower up, They have a generator system because they use it to dispatch the entire county's police departments, except for Conway, which is key to the story. They also dispatch all of the fire departments in the Carroll County, which goes to Wolfboro, Wakefield, as far north as Jackson. You get a picture of Carroll County. Everything comes off the top of Oak Ridge except for Conway. The two fire departments that don't get dispatched from the top of Eidelweiss is the Wolfboro Fire Department and the North Conway Fire Department, which I got off reading the website for that. The original agreement has us getting no monetary consideration for letting them use the building, use our land, put a tower up that the agreement says cannot be seen from anywhere in Eidelweiss. So we have to have everybody go and pick their favorite spot and see if you can see it or not, because you should not be able to see it. And most importantly, use our road to get there to maintain such an installation. This agreement is overdue to be revisited by both parties. We believe that since the agreement was signed, the Sheriff's Department let the town of Conway put equipment in our room.
Yes.
And use the tower for their own purposes, which we're not too sure the agreement lets them do. So it would be work and cost to investigate this. Like I said, it's overdue for us to visit this. We didn't have time. We had a busy year fixing computers and chasing crime. We're trying to get our money back and figure out how not to let this happen to us ever again. We didn't get to the table to start this. So we decided to take these two warrant articles that we don't have the agreement to show you and to ask you to ratify it and make it official. We turned it into a referendum where we're asking you to read the next section that comes out of the existing agreement that says the consideration, this is in the current, it says the VDOE agrees to lease the leased premises, which is the land and the building, to the tenant, which is the Sheriff's Department and the dispatching of the fire departments, without direct payment of monetary consideration. In lieu of monetary consideration, here's key, see how this touches your emotions. Eidelweiss is letting them do this for the enhanced public health, safety, and welfare, including safety, health, and welfare of Eidelweiss residents and property owners, created by the improvement of public safety, that the purpose of this lease agreement shall be deemed full and adequate consideration. So the fact that they're dispatching police services and emergency fire services to Eidelweiss is the consideration we're getting for letting the entire county use our land, our building, and our road to get to it. So what we're basically doing is asking you to tell us whether we should try to seek monetary consideration with the renewal of this agreement, which is not asking the sheriff to take money out of his budget. It's asking him to tell Carroll County that all of the taxpayers in the entire county should be paying for the right to have a key facility on our property using our buildings. Or whether you like the way that it was originally done, that you feel good about your increased health, safety, and the fact that we're letting all of the county taxpayers get off without having to pay a nickel towards this. What do you want?
And just so everybody knows, because the other warrant, because the other tower that exists on district land pays $500 monthly, $500 monthly is what we are going to go to the Sheriff's Department and Carroll County with as the number that will start discussions with them on starting some compensation for the Eidelweiss taxpayers.
We're also going to look to see exactly what Conway is doing and see if we should also be saying to them, you have to pay to play to be on top of our mountain
Right,
because you have no deal with us.
right.
Questions?
That was my question.
Okay. Any other questions?
You're
No
making
questions or
decisions.
comments? Are we ready to recommend or not recommend? So the idea is they're looking for us to say, yes, go forward with this
Yes.
idea.
You're advising
of,
us to go in this direction by saying
Right.
yes.
Okay,
Get the
everybody
money.
understands that?
No says leave it as is. We're happy.
Okay. All those in favor of them pursuing this? All those opposed? It's unanimous.
Now you put us to work.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to do most of the work anyway.
Well, it would be easier work not to have to negotiate money for the first time. Might have to spend money on lawyers and stuff.
Lastly is Article 17, which is basically asking if there's any other business that anybody would like to.
Nope, highway and,
Don't go too far.
so
I was going to talk to this one.
16.
We talked about
You want to talk to
Oh,
it?
I can do it.
Why don't you start?
I'll do it. I'll do it.
And then you can.
16. I'm sorry. Why don't I
16.
have
Did you read that off completely, Tom?
Okay, highway,
gonna
oh
give a
yeah,
little background.
parking ordinance, yeah, okay. To see if the district will vote to change the authority to the Board of Commissioners for the highway and parking ordinance as stated by New Hampshire RSA 52. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Seconded by,
Second.
you have the floor.
Okay, just a little background. Some of you may have been at a public hearing, I think it was the summer of 22, when a previous board wanted to change the then existing parking ordinance. A lot of people showed up for that. They were not happy with the proposals. As I recall, they were talking about a payment schedule. People had to pay to park their cars or vehicles, and there was all sorts of other restrictions and limitations. It created a lot of hate and discontent. It was ugly. It was a very ugly meeting. So now fast forward to the annual meeting in the following year, 23, a homeowner in the Village District of Eidelweiss put together a petition warrant article that eventually got passed, which is the existing parking ordinance, and to try and prevent future commissioners from doing what the previous board did in the summer of 22 to try and create something that really was a nightmare. It said they couldn't change it. The commissioners couldn't make modifications. It could only be done at the annual meeting. Okay. So this particular individual put it together in the petition warrant article. He did the best he could, but it created a parking ordinance that we, over the last year, with all the other problems we've come across, said there's too many loopholes, there's too many parts that don't give clarity to the use of especially the Hot Wheel parking lot. So all we're asking is give the ability back to us as commissioners to make changes to the parking ordinance as needed. And of course, if that were to happen, there has to be a public hearing to discuss those changes. And that's all it is we want to. The existing parking ordinance is not bad, but there are areas of it that need shoring up, need to be clarified. So it works for everybody and works for us, for those who are trying to enforce it. Do you have anything to add, Nancy or Mark?
I do. Do you have?
Yeah, in general, the state law does not allow or does not have a provision that has the legislative body, which is all of us, at an annual meeting, have guidance over ordinances. Ordinances in all the state laws are under the commissioner's control. So we're putting this out here mostly just so that everybody knew that the state laws do give the commissioners control over it, and that is why all the state laws require public hearings prior to any type of change to it. Commissioners cannot just change it to something they want. You know, they have to discuss it with the public. They have to have a public hearing, and then they can, following the public hearing, based as what the people want, can change it. But this ordinance comes across and it clearly says that it can only be changed at the annual meeting. So we wanted to honor that, just being aware of the broad scope of the legislative body's input. So we wanted to bring it here instead of just changing it on our own and starting announcing that we were going to have public hearings. So we just, again, we're just trying to be as open about everything that's happening and everything that we found that was questionable for the last few years, that, you know, as open as we can about everything that we found, and this is one of the things that we came across.
Would have covered this is the highway and parking ordinance, and would have covered the parking lot issues in good detail. The other part is the highway. Just in the past year, we have had contractors and property owners modify the roads in a bad way. On Appinville Way, we had a contractor use 1.5-inch stone, and they just decided they were going to cover the road from edge to edge for a few hundred feet. That caused problems for people driving on it. You don't want to be driving on 1.5-inch stone. We never use it. We use 3/4-inch crushed gravel, and we pack it down. We're going to be using a lot more calcium chloride and magnesium chloride to stiffen the roads. On Bristenstock, we had another example of a contractor working for a house, and the property owners sold the house this year. They put 1.5-inch stone on the road. We have contractors doing whatever they think they want to do to our roads. I want to have the ability to change this ordinance where we have some pretty stiff fines for contractors to decide that they want to change our roads in a way that are unacceptable to us. There's a contractor that left Appinville Way above Lugano with this dip in it that your car actually goes a little airborne driving on a gravel road. I'm sure you're familiar with it. How can they do that? We have ordinances that say you can't drive a steel track machine, like an excavator with the steel tracks on it, on our paved roads because it damages them. The fine is $100. For an excavator not to have to trailer an excavator up our steep roads, pay the $100 if they catch us. And then we have to fix our roads those are expensive to pave a road. It shortens the life of the road because water starts building up and any marks they leave in the road. So it's the parking lot, as Wood talked about. It's following the way the New Hampshire legislature structured the state laws, that it's in the hands of the elected body, not petitioned warrant articles where they take this away from the elected board. And Nancy's pointing out when we do anything, it has to be done with hearings. We have to get the feedback before we institute it. But we would like to protect the parking lot, the use of the parking lot, and the roads in a much better way than we experienced this year, on top of everything else we were doing.
Yes, and there's some homeowners that have done there's some homeowners that have done some stuff building their driveways as well. Jungfrau. We all looked at an area in Jungfrau where they had put stones in front of where their driveway exit is, or entrance, to keep water from that area and to make it easier for them to make their turn into their driveway.
We spent a lot of time
it doesn't help anybody else trying to drive down the road.
We spent a lot of time with the way the driveway ordinances was not being enforced. And the DPW gave us the feedback of trying to figure out how much to express in dollars, what it costs all of us to maintain roads where there are driveways that are built that damage the gravel road right in front of the driveway. Every rainstorm, that driveway is designed to damage the road. That they have to come out with the backhoe or the grader and trucks and fix the problem. The other thing that we ran into this year is people throwing things big things into the ditches of the road. Rock, we had people deposit wood.
Yep.
They clean all the wood off their lot and they throw it in the ditch in front of their house. The rainwater comes by, can't get through, whatever they put in there, it starts to damage the road next to it. We would like to, it's going to take some time, but we'd like to work on all of these things so that we're not just bleeding money, fixing things that somebody decided to do to our roads.
Fines.
Any questions? We ready to vote? Simply to see if the district will vote to change the authority to the Board of Commissioners for the Highway and Parking Ordinance as stated by New Hampshire RSA 52. All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Now we're to other business, if there is any. Anybody want to bring anything up? No? Well, that completes us. Yeah, I'm sorry.
On Oak Ridge Road, a house, 3 or 4 houses down from me, everybody knows it, it's got the blue truck in front of it, got holes in the roof and everything. What's going to happen with it? It's obviously abandoned property.
It is not actually an abandoned property. There is a property owner that is, that owns it. If I believe a tax bill was overdue. I do believe the owner actually brought the arrears for the taxes up to date right before the deadline that the town gave him, like the day that the town set the deadline. So it's just going to be a matter of time where the town will wind